Hello and welcome to ICA in Conversation that broadcasts twice a month and of course focuses on current issues and challenges in the context of compliance and counter financial crime. I'm Tim Tyler, and coming up we're going to consider open source intelligence, and in particular how we can make effective use of this as a rich source of information to help us to meet compliance and counter financial crime goals. I'm joined by Ben Jones, Associate Course Director at the ICA. Ben has made extensive use of open source intelligence, or OSINT, for many years concerning fraud and high-risk investigations. Hello, Ben, and thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Tim. Thanks for having me.
For those that are joining on LinkedIn Live, can I encourage you to raise any questions that you may have in the comments sections? And we plan to run between Ben and I for about 20 minutes to leave 10 minutes for any questions that you may have. So Ben, let's jump straight in. And I'd like to ask, well, first of all, can we clarify, what do we mean by open source intelligence, or OSINT?
Well, it's really about the information that is available to anybody on the internet, really. So we can talk about free sites, but also paid sites. The fact that anybody has access to the information means it's really open source, open to anybody. So it's really leveraging that information and using it to understand patterns and various fraud typologies, potential sanctions evasion issues. And I think now with so much data online, and there are so many sites, we can track the movement of vessels around the world and planes. And sometimes they can give us an indication of a potential compliance issue. So it's really leveraging that information.
Okay, thank you. So can I just sort of pick up on that then? You've mentioned that we can leverage on this very rich source of information. How can we do that? Can you give us some examples of how we can use this sort of information?
Well, from a compliance perspective, I think the best site really are company registries, so we can get shareholder information and information like that. But then we can go on to look at other kinds of sites, things like patents, for example. So sometimes I've searched the intellectual property that companies will hold to see what kind of products they make. It could be, for example, drones, or it could be dual-use goods. There can be even Twitter feeds. I remember looking at a company once and realizing that on their Twitter feed they had exhibited at an arms fair, which again changed the risk rating of the customer. So it's really being able to form a better holistic picture of the company or the individual, and really being able to discern the right level of risk for that individual. And with criminals, obviously, they like to hide a lot of what they're doing. And so by using open source, we either find something that we don't like, and that allows us to either exit the relationship or not onboard a customer, or we can find lots of pieces of the jigsaw that actually builds a consistent picture, and that can give us comfort to deal with a particular business.
So, of course, there's staggering amounts of information. I think we're now using the term zettabytes. The number of zeros I've lost touch with, but it's just a huge amount of information. And within that, of course, you've talked about Twitter, commercial databases, social media, geolocation, and the myriad of websites and other material that's available to us. And I know in a little while we're going to look at some examples of this, and I hope bring this to life a little. But before we do, can I ask, just for practical considerations, we're living in the world where there are controls around how we use data, something we're very mindful of within compliance. So What constraints are there around, first of all, what we can do, and secondly, how we can store the information when we're focusing on individuals?
Absolutely. Yeah, a great question. So we've got the GDPR in Europe. We've got various similar regulations around the world as well. So the key thing to do when firms are thinking about the parameters of what they can do is firstly understand what's the law, what does it allow me to do. And with the GDPR, we're really looking at using legitimate reason as our ground to hold data. We're doing it for financial crime prevention reasons, and that's our legitimate aim. What we've got to ensure is that we're acting proportionately. So we're not collecting every bit of data we can find on somebody. We're looking at somebody's profile, especially if there's been an element of crime, and we can show maybe a relationship between two individuals who maybe we would not want to do business with. It's really looking at the reasons, the justification. And we've also got to remember, as we saw with a case last year, it's also possible to submit a freedom of information request and get a copy of your data as well. So organizations have to be aware that anything they save could be disclosable to that individual.
So let's just unpack that for a moment, if I may. Let's say we're doing enhanced due diligence, and in that context, we're researching a high-value, high-risk customer. And quite naturally, we're looking to perhaps confirm the information that they provided and gain a fuller and more holistic understanding of their activities. So that might involve visiting a range of different websites, and it also might involve recording information where it's proportionate and reasonable for us to do that. Now, we don't need to ask their permission to do that, but if they subsequently, through a disclosure request, ask us what information do we have in respect of them, then we would normally be required to disclose that. Is that a fair description?
Yes, absolutely. And I think another point to make is that usually we see this set out in the terms and conditions that an institution will give to a new client. They will say we're going to do our regulatory checks for sanctions, for PEPs, these kind of things, but we may also use other sources as well to inform our risk profile.
Okay, so we've mentioned a few uses or contexts in which we can use this. So that's useful, I think, just to sort of summarize that. Enhanced due diligence is an obvious area, and I know you personally have worked extensively in this space. It's natural that we're going to look for open source information to corroborate or possibly not corroborate the information we've been given. But you've also mentioned sanctions, or PEPs, particularly exposed persons inquiries. What else might we use this type of research to support?
I think how I've used it is really to uncover hidden risks. And a lot of times we can find that there is an association between somebody we definitely don't want to do business with and a potential client. So if we look at really complex investigations, if we're looking at high net worth individuals, there's always plenty of media about them. And I think sometimes we can discover that, for example, a business or a person is actually involved in several different industries that may be extremely high risk. The arms sector involvement was certainly something which brought a few raised eyebrows in the place where I was working at the time. So it's looking at those kind of risks and also examining the kind of business that the company does. Do they have dual use products? Is that going to enhance our risk? A lot of it has been a lot of it is like a left-right exercise. So perhaps we've got some information on a person and we can build a picture, but open source allows us to get that greater context. We can look maybe if we've seen when sanctions have been introduced after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, we've seen lots of assets transfer from different individuals that are now on the sanctions list. So looking at who those assets have been transferred to, and also the plausibility. So I've also discovered lots of maybe cleaners or gardeners of some very high-profile people owning assets which are far beyond their expected salary. So it's also making sure that the beneficial owner of a company is actually the beneficial owner, and it's not somebody who is just acting as a nominee. So it's these kind of risks. There was a case a few months ago in the papers about how two UK banks apparently offered bank accounts to Iran and to Iranian companies. And looking at the press reports, some of the banks said, well, we didn't know about the existence of this secret trust that was held. So that meant that the bank account was actually apparently owned on behalf of the Iranian regime. So open source allows us to dig a bit deeper, see if there's any red flags, and just allow us to make better informed decisions.
That's a really good example. Yeah, thank you. And I know, Ben, we were speaking about this before we started recording, that you've focused on a very current issue, and you've recorded the way in which you interacted with material on the internet in order to, I think, showcase how we can use open source or OSINT in this way. So I think you're going to take us through your experience just focusing on this very live issue. So first of all, what's the issue that you've used as a case study?
So there was a story on the BBC website about a month ago talking about how some people have paid £99 for a stargazing break. They thought they were having some nice accommodation in Yorkshire, but actually it was a scam, and they just had an empty field. So they were deprived of the weekend break, but also they obviously lost their money as well. And that was the story which really caught my interest.
Okay, so take us through it. Explain what it was that you were looking at and how we can use open source information in this context.
Okay, so reading the story, it's about this young couple, and they've paid their money to go for this weekend. How the BBC have reported this story is that they did a reverse image search. So we can use sites like Bing or Google Images to do reverse image searches. So this was the picture on the BBC website of the location. This is what they thought they were, where they were staying. The picture was actually stolen from this website in Australia, and I'll show you how we can find that out in just a moment. So I've got a browser reverse image plugin on my browser that allows me to do these reverse image searches quite quickly. And again, just by searching in Bing, I discovered this is the real location, which is in Australia. This website was set up about 18 months ago. So the genuine website was set up about mid-2003, I believe. It was listed on Airbnb for a while. And so this scam is apparently, there was another website involved, and the BBC has created this picture of the website where these individuals were scammed. What I did is I looked at the website, and it was called Stardome. So I did a bit of Googling, and I tried to find this website. And again, the website, thankfully, has been taken down now. So all we see is this page by Shopify saying that this store is unavailable at the moment. So the site's currently down. So one tool that I often use is the Wayback Machine, and that allows us to look at archived pictures of websites that were previously available on the internet. I had a little look at the Wayback Machine, and I found this website, Star Domes. It was indexed in August time, so I just took a look at it, and I managed to get the website loading. And again, it was very similar to the BBC website. It's got the same banner at the top saying July sale, £99. And the pictures on this website were the pictures that matched in the BBC article. So I was able to locate the website. There's some text here about us, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. So I wondered if this was the actual website. And again, when you click on it, we've just got this Shopify link, because obviously Shopify has taken this website down. So I did a bit of investigation. I wanted to know when the website appeared on the internet, so I can use a domain search called Hoxie, and this website allows me to say that the website was created in August time, and it also allows me to look at similar named websites. The registrar is Two Cows Domains Inc. These are the people that host the website, and again, there's no suggestion that they know anything about this case. So I'm looking at the registrar and the dates when the website was created, but I also noticed there were quite a few other websites on the right-hand side, quite a few similar domains of very similar names that were registered from summer 2024. And so I went and looked at some of these websites as well. And what I found is that many of these websites have identical pages to the Stardome site that I showed you a few minutes ago. The sites were registered in the summer, and again, they've gone, most of the same sites are by the same registrar, which is Two Cows. I have searched a few other registrars as well, because I just wanted to make sure that it was indeed displaying this location. So again, I've done a few searches using the Wayback Machine, and I realized that actually that one website that I found, that was not the only one. So it appears that somebody has created several of these websites so that when either the provider or Shopify are notified about this scam, they take down the website, and then this person can just lure customers to a different website. So it looks like this is not just an isolated incident, but this is like a carbon copy thing which is happening again and again and again. So I did a few other things as well. I've searched some of the address as well, and that produced another site in a slightly different name. So that was something I discovered, and also searching some of the text as well, I was able to realize that this person had created quite a few of these sites. So we've got Star Domes, but we've also got bookstar-domes.com. And again, the website is down. This page is by Shrine, and Shrine is a provider of website layouts. So if you want to create a website layout, you can use the Shrine template. So again, I looked at the Wayback Machine because the website is currently down. And again, I've seen that same website under Bookstar-Domes. So it really shows that this case was what I believe is the same person, I believe, creating duplicate websites again and again to do this. And I'll just show you some other bits. I'm actually going to try and move my recording forward a little bit. Again, what I'm seeing is the similarities with the domain. They're all registered in September time. And what I did is I happened to Google this text, which says nestled away if you're seeking a few days relaxation. And that text was used on all of these identical websites. I just thought I'd have a play. And what I discovered is another website. And this time it's a different location, a different picture. It's called Olive Haven. And this website is still live. And it's exactly the same text that was used on the Stardome website. It was the exact same provider, 2 Cows, the same registrar. It's also by Shopify, and they're also using the same Shrine template. So this site is live. I wouldn't recommend staying here just yet. I would say it's worth doing some more due diligence. So with the Stardome site, I did a reverse image search. I also did a reverse image search on this website, which is still live. And I happened to find that this website, this location, was actually located in Northumberland, about 250 miles where the website claims this site actually is. So I looked at the location. It looks a very nice location. This is the real site where I believe the photos have been taken from. So this is the genuine site, and there's lots of reviews to suggest that it's genuine, and this is the rather dubious copy of that website. I did things like save the file name of the picture, so that file name there that I'm highlighting in the URL browser, I went on to, it was a little bit technical here, I went on to the developer tools to really analyze this website in further detail. And when I looked at the developer tools, what I found was exactly the same file name as was used in the photo. So I'm confident that it absolutely is exactly the same photo.
So can I jump in there? What I'd like to do is just summarize where we've got to so far. And I appreciate there's more that if we had a little bit longer, we could unpack around this. But I want to allow a little bit of time for 1 or 2 questions that have come through, Ben. So what I think you've described is, and it's really useful seeing it unpacked in this way. You start with the BBC report that touches on Stardome, that you've considered images that were being used on that website, and the allegations are that that website is a scam, and you find that they are the same images that we see cropping up in Australia. Those websites that appear to be fraudulent have been taken down, but you've used the Wayback Machine to identify where they were and what they were previously. You've used Hoxie to determine when those websites were created, and you've been able to go further to determine who the registrar is for those websites. And in looking at that, you've identified a series of very similar websites that were registered at the same time. And again, you've been able to recover the details of those websites. You can use Wayback to look at the details of how they've been used. And what it means is that if this is a scam, and of course the websites are taken down because they're fraudulent, what you've described is that the fraudsters, or the alleged fraudsters, are in a position to very quickly stand up another website that hasn't yet been taken down, that is strikingly similar to the original, and keep this fraud moving. You've touched on Shrine to determine how the layout of the website has been determined. And in combining the understanding that you've described together with the text that was used in the websites, you've identified another website that's still live that is using images from a quite genuine, legitimate website, but holding it out to be something different in another part of the country, and it has the same text, the same registrar, the same Shopify details being used to promote it, and the same Shrine template. So this, I think, just illustrates the power of the kind of research that we can do in this context. We've got a few minutes, though, and I hope that is that a fair summary that I've provided?
Yes, the only thing I'd add is that this site is live as of right now. I don't know if it will still be live in a few days' time.
Okay. So, some questions that have come through. Thank you for that. James, our colleague James, Global Lead for Anti-Money Laundering. James, it's good to see you and to hear you joining us today. You've highlighted the importance to distinguish this type of research from negative news, which is a term that we often hear referred to in the context, for instance, of anti-money laundering or counter-terrorist financing. James points out that he hates the term negative news because it creates a perception that we're looking for something that is in itself negative, and it may well not be. It might be entirely positive, and it's only when we put it alongside other information that we can get some value from it. And that's a fair summary, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we can also use the power of the internet to also confirm cases. So one of the biggest difficulties, the biggest challenge I had is dealing with some very, very small companies based in Indonesia. And it was very, very hard to actually determine that these companies existed. And I think they were coal mining firms. So we can use open source pictures, even satellite pictures, to actually determine that this business does exist and they're doing what they say they're doing as well. So it can be used to corroborate as well.
Brilliant, thank you. John Reed, thank you for your question. And it's a really interesting one. I think you highlight that we can differentiate in our approach to using OSINT. We can differentiate between the use of tactics to follow a lead, to follow a line of inquiry, and use of tools, which we might use in that context. But it is quite useful, I think, to recognize both components within the work that you're doing. Can you sort of expand on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important to be able to get a picture of what a business or a person is doing. And I think a lot of the time we can use these tools to follow that line of investigation. The case that springs to mind was when I was working in fraud, and we had a person claiming that they were the victim of fraud. They got a fraud refund. About 2 weeks later, somebody else had the exact same thing happen. Using open source, we realized that they lived at the same address. So things like that, we had a suspicion that something was wrong, and then we used open source to really confirm that suspicion.
That sounds like a really straightforward case that you dealt with, and very often, of course, it requires more complex, joined up thinking, where we're using tools, and you've touched on a few. But I'm mindful of the time. We are coming up towards our 30 minutes. Ben, you and I are going to continue this conversation. I think we're also going to unpack some of the details of the websites that are particularly useful. I know you've touched on one or two already. We're going to do that and record that in a longer briefing, which will be available to ICA members. But for the moment, Ben, can I thank you for this? It's been a really interesting conversation. I look forward to carrying it on in a moment. Can I thank you for joining us wherever you are in the world? We continue to record and broadcast these LinkedIn Live events on the final Wednesday and the second Wednesday of each month. And I'll be publishing details over the Christmas and New Year period, anticipating where we're going to focus in the new year. But in the meantime, thank you very much for joining us.